What's good everyone, I'm Zayas, and today I'm here to review Dorohedoro, a manga written by Hayashida. This is an action, horror, mystery, comedy manga, which is a seinen, and was her first and pretty much only prominent work up until this point. Die Dark is currently in production right now, but it still doesn't have much out, and Manga was another collaboration that she did, but was very short and didn't have that much to it. She has managed to remain pretty much completely off the grid in her 18 years of making Dorohedoro. It went from 2000 to 2018, and we still don't know her real name, what she looks like, or anything like that. We have managed to see some interviews from her where we get to know a little bit more about her. And the most interesting thing that I found was that she said that she's into a lot of Western media, including BoJack Horseman. Throughout Dorohedoro, you can definitely see some major influences from a lot of classic horror movies, such as Friday the 13th with the Jason mask that Nikaido wore. And it's hard to find a good comparison to Dorohedoro, both in Japanese and Western media, as Dorohedoro is very strange and there's not many series like it. In terms of art style, I can see Berserk being somewhat similar to Dorohedoro, as they're both extremely dark and gory. But that's the only real similarities you'll find between these series. The atmospheres are completely different. Strangely enough, a series that this sort of reminded me of was Cowboy Bebop. In Bebop, the characters are living in this post-apocalyptic world, and everything is very dreary, dreadful, not much is going well, but the characters act as if everything's normal and fine, sort of similar to the way that the characters in Dorohedoro act. And there is a ton of gore in this series, so I wouldn't recommend it to the faint of heart. But this gore is used not in a cheap, shock value type of way. It's used to create this world that's extremely dismal, a little bit dreadful, odd. It's an extremely rough world where characters can die at any given time. The backgrounds are always extremely well detailed, and they're usually in shambles and extremely worn down, and it really helps fill that mystery horror aesthetic that the author was going for. On top of the environment looking incredibly dark and incredibly grim, these characters also carry this sort of punk aesthetic to them, which makes them feel like they belong in this world. The characters are usually extremely large, very dense, pretty heavy looking characters which look like they could survive in a horrible world like this. These character designs are done extraordinarily well. The characters stand out a lot from not only each other, but every other manga series out there. If you see a character from Dorohedoro, you know that that character is from this series. While I really do love Nikaido and Kaiman, my favorite characters in the series have to be Shin and Noi. Noi is this big burly character who does not look like she should be a female, and Shin is this huge muscular man who wears this heart-shaped mask which is incredibly detailed and looks badass. Shin has these stitches all around his arms, and he uses some of the coolest magic in the series, and Noi is more of a healer type, but I really appreciate how thick Hayashida managed to make her characters. Noi is obviously the most outstanding example of this, and probably my favorite female character from the series. Nikaido too, compared to other manga, is pretty thick, as are every single female character in this series. And Hayashida does a really good job at making incredibly great female characters. These characters have tons of personality, tons of great designs, and I really just like them in comparison to a lot of manga out there. Back to the rest of the designs, every single character, as I said, is unique from one another. Whether it be the Cross Eyes and Kaiman's group, everybody in the series is extremely unique and memorable, and there's a lot of effort being put into these character designs, and I think it came out great. I feel like all the characters really feel like they belong in this world. And not only do they feel like they belong, they all feel like they're living in this world, and they all have their own unique goals, motivations, personalities, backgrounds. Everything about these characters is just great. And the best thing about the artwork is that it's extremely consistent throughout the series. Every character consistently looks great. The artwork of the entire thing looks grim, dark. It doesn't degrade or lose a lot of its value. Along with great character designs, the characters were given great personalities. The backstories in particular I think were done very well in this series. They weren't long enough to the point where you felt as if it was dragging on and interrupting the main story, but they were just long enough to the point where you got to know the character better and got to know more about them. I also appreciated how some of the main characters sort of had their backstory split up a little more than the side characters, where you would see a little bit at a time and a little bit later. It left a feel of mystery and didn't overload you too much with just backstory. I really do like the comedy in this series from the beginning to the end. There's a lot of nonchalant, sort of carefree jokes just thrown in, and they're usually pretty funny. There's some moments with Ebisu also and Fujita that are a little funny. Sometimes they're hit or miss though, but usually they're not that bad. The timing on these jokes is impeccable. They always come at the best timing, where everything is super serious. And on top of this, the side stories, the extra chapters, are always usually pretty good, and those are usually the funniest chapters in the series. And although the series starts out being more of a horror themed series, it sort of transitions more into mystery through midway throughout the series, where they're trying to figure out what happened to Kaiman. I love the way the mystery unravels. They definitely give you hints here and there about what's happening in the series, and they clue you into certain things, but they never just give it away, and it never feels too obvious about what's going to happen next. I also liked how the mystery was given to us in different characters' perspectives, where we didn't always get it from Kaiman and the main group. Sometimes N was involved, sometimes the Cross Eyes are involved. But this does lead into a few problems, the main one being that there's so many perspectives and so many timelines that it does get a little bit confusing. And this definitely was confusing for me when it was being published at a monthly rate. But now when you go through it, it makes a little more sense, but I can still see it being a little bit convoluted. After the grand mystery is solved and everything is sorted out, we finally go into this phase where Ai is trying to figure out who he is and deal with what he has become as a person. His story is definitely very horror-like, having 9 people fit into one body, and I definitely didn't see this reveal coming, even though there were so many hints and even the backstory of him given to us before in the series. It was around here when I started questioning some of the initial plot occurrences, the biggest ones being Fujita being very close to N for some reason. It's pretty puzzling considering how Fujita is super useless and N is the big bad boss of the entire city. And on top of this, we also don't really know why Kaiman was going around murdering those magic users. He didn't have to kill any of them, but he decided to murder them. I have a feeling that Hayashida sort of changed the direction in which the story was going, so maybe some of those initial things didn't make as much sense. It's not that large of a deal, but it left me a little confused. And when it comes to the power system in the manga, I think smoke is a pretty unique and interesting way to have a magic in the world. That means that not only people can make magic, but people can store and use magic for themselves, so powerful magic users are definitely very much in demand. Not only just this, but that means that non-magic users are capable of using smoke to gain some of the benefits. My favorite ability was Shin's, just because of how gruesome and brutal it was. But there's a ton of abilities which are great. En's ability is definitely very surprising considering how powerful he is, and I like how unique his abilities are. And after the mystery is solved and everything is over, we finally get into the part where the manga starts to drop off a little bit. And it's very sad and a little disheartening to see that the manga actually got quite a bit worse after around the 100 chapter mark, or around where everybody's in whole and the mystery was solved. The ending actually really reminded me of a shonen manga. All the non-magic users, all the magic users, everybody in the world sort of joined forces to defeat Whole, and a bunch of magic users give Kaiman their powers, and it all feels a little bit not as serious as I would like it to have been. It's pretty frequent to see these problems in endings with shonen manga where characters become absurdly powerful towards the end of the series and they start fighting with each other, but it's pretty rare for seinen manga to have this problem, so I was pretty surprised when I saw that this happened. I just think the series overstayed its welcome a little too long and ended up going in a pretty different direction from where it started. This arc isn't like the worst arc you'll ever see in manga. There's definitely still some funny jokes with Whole, Ebisu, and all the devils, but it's not very serious. I did enjoy the jokes, I did enjoy the character designs, I did enjoy the artwork, but I just didn't enjoy the storytelling. The Cross-Eyes boss felt more like the final boss to the series and felt more disorienting, strange, mysterious, horrifying than Whole ever really did. Overall though, the series was great, with some great characters, great character design, incredible world building, some great storytelling in the first half, but there was a little bit of a drop off past the 100 chapter mark. And on top of this, there were a few moments of confusion earlier on in the series. So I'm going to give this series a light to decent 8. Let me know what you thought of the series. Leave a like, leave a dislike, whatever. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.